Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you who are joining us today. We are very, very pleased to have you here, and also it's great to see many of you joining us from various parts of the globe. So a warm welcome. So today we are going to share our experience from the CADRI implementation. So from assessment to action, as you can see from the slide here. And then we will also be sharing the work that we have done in the past 15 years by providing the CADRI support to countries to risk-inform their development program and strategies in bringing together a comprehensive or integrated disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation capacity development support. So today, we are joined by our colleagues. So we are very pleased to have my colleague, Sophie Baroness, who will be the co-facilitators in today's session. And we are also joined by our colleagues from Mongolia, Ms. Aruna Chadrabal, who is the head of the Resident Coordinator Office. Very pleased to have you here. Today's session will be, we will be speaking about introducing the CADRI, who we are, what we do, and how we deliver our services. And then toward the end of the session, we will have a question and answers. So before we start the moving on to the next session, we would like to share the quick background on who we are, for those of you who are not familiar with us. So the Capacity for Disaster Risk Reduction Initiative, or in short, CADRI, is a multi-sectoral interagency initiative that was established over 15 years ago. So we started with a very humble beginning as a training facility to a full-fledged capacity development program, which we are, as I mentioned, aiming to have been supporting countries to risk-inform their development programs through providing a very integrated and coherent capacity development support in disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. So we are also very pleased to have like more than 20 plus organizations, our partners, helping us to work together as a one UN, but our partnership also extend beyond the UN system. So we work very closely with the IFRC and other partners. So without further ado, we would also like now to share with you the 15 years testimonial video from our clients, which are the governments who have received the CADRI services.
El proceso de trabajo ha permitido activar al Comité de Seguimiento del Subsistema de Recuperación, la cual es una instancia de coordinación del Sistema Nacional de Gestión del Riesgo, permitiendo la alineación de las agendas nacionales en la temática de la recuperación. Debido a que las recomendaciones dadas permiten identificar cursos de acción claros para un adecuado seguimiento, aseguramiento y trazabilidad de los procesos de reconstrucción y recuperación de comunidades a mediano y largo plazo, las estamos considerando como insumos para la elaboración del próximo Plan Nacional de Gestión del Riesgo 2026-2030.
Le diagnostic stratégique mené à Madagascar par CADRI représente une étape majeure dans la mise en œuvre du cadre de Sendai. Nous disposons désormais d'un cadre stratégique consolidé, des structures de coordination en place, de plans de contingence multisectoriels ainsi que de premiers jalons en matière de résilience structurelle. Je voudrais souligner que l'apport du CADRI ne se limite pas au diagnostic. C'est une impulsion stratégique pour une gestion proactive, l'intégrée et résiliente des risques à Madagascar.
CADRI mission, it was assisted the Zanzibar Disaster Management Commission to develop some of the system. This is included the disaster management information system that will link different sectors or stakeholders. This will be an integrated system that can look with the different issue, especially related to the early warning information, but also to respond effectively with the disasters. For example, we are developing some of the emergency preparedness and the response plan in this sector level.
За энэ одоо үнэлгээний дүнг бид гамшигын эрсдлийг бууруулах үндэсний зөвлөлийн хуралдаанаар хэлэлцүүлээд салбар дундын үйл ажиллагаа, хууль эрх зүйн орчин, засаглал институцийн хооронд авч хэрэгжүүлэх арга хэмжээний одоо төлөвлөгөө болгон хэрэгжилтийг зохион байгуулан ажиллаж байна. Тэгээд нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын CADRI үнэлгээний багаас гаргасан Монгол улсын гамшигын эрсдлийг бууруулах эн яралтай хэрэгжүүлэх 46 одоо зөвлөмж, нийт одоо 126 зөвлөмжийг хэрэгжүүлэх ийм ажил бидний хүлээж байна.
Thank you, colleagues. So I hope you have enjoyed the video. So now, without further ado, I would like to hand over the next segment to my colleague Sophie Baroness. Over to you, Sophie.
Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues from wherever you connect. So a very warm welcome to the webinar. I'm going to go a little bit more into the detail of what we do at the CADRI partnership and what we offer collectively to countries. And I would like to start by saying that when we say, okay, CADRI is about turning the Sendai commitment into action, if we really simplify what really we do, we support countries identify gaps in terms of capacities in disaster risk reduction and maybe more broadly climate adaptation. We also support the prioritization of investment in risk reduction. And finally, a very big objective of the CADRI partnership is to strengthen coherence in interventions of disaster risk reduction or risk-informed development between partners. So between the government and the UN system, much more broadly between humanitarian and development actors, and also within the UN system itself, because it's also very much about building coherence between UN agencies as well in their support to the country in disaster risk reduction. So what is our service offer? Many of you may be familiar with our service offer, which has not changed. So we're going to talk to you about our change of business model today. But the service offer itself remains those core services that you see on the screen that I'm going to talk a little bit more about. And these have not changed because, they have evolved, of course, especially in 2020, but there has not been major change in terms of the service offer, because when we celebrated the anniversary of the CADRI partnership at the global platform last year, we were actually very positively impressed by the feedback we received from governments and the confirmation that this service offer remains very relevant, especially in countries at high risk of disaster and climate change impact. So what are those services? One core service that many of you may be familiar with is capacity diagnosis, supporting government identify gaps in capacities, in systems, in policies, in information. So it's very broad and, of course, across different socioeconomic sectors. That's one. The second service is in support of prioritization and planning, and it is, of course, very much informed by the capacity diagnosis. Another service offer is also what we call a programming review, which is really a mapping of all interventions across the humanitarian development realms, of all interventions that contribute to reduce risk at national, local level, to be able to actually identify where there are overlaps. So I'll come to that a bit more in detail. And finally, there is also the training and referral offer of the CADRI partners, where we've been able to actually consolidate the offer from all the 20 CADRI partners in terms of training, for instance. So let me move to the capacity diagnosis tool. As you know, we will have actually the opportunity to present to you the tool in much more detail in the second part of this webinar. So you know that this webinar is in two parts. That's part one. We hope you'll join us for part two. And in part two, we'll be able to actually go a bit more, to really go into the tool, see how you can use it for your work, how it can support you in your work. So that's what we call the capacity diagnosis and planning tool. But just a highlight on the capacity diagnosis tool. So it's a tool, but it's also very much a process. And it's like it's a bit like a massive questionnaire that you can actually completely tailor to the country context. So, for instance, if the government want to have an idea of what are the systems to understand risk and reduce risk in agriculture, education, and WASH, they would select those three sectors. It's also possible to select, you will see that at the second webinar, but it's also possible to select specific hazards. So if the country is really very much exposed to drought or to glut or whatever type of hazard, it's also possible to select a specific hazard. And of course, you can also decide to use this tool and tailor it to a district level, provincial level diagnosis. So it's not only a tool, it's also a methodology to actually bring the whole of government together with the partners at country level to actually engage in this diagnosis, in this capacity diagnosis analysis. So we'll have the opportunity to introduce to you the digital tool more in detail at the next webinar. So now I'm going to move to the second service line, which some of you also maybe may also be familiar with. Or I'm going to, maybe I can have this highlight of actually the feedback on the tool.
As UN resident coordinator in the Kyrgyz Republic, I am proud to highlight the transformative value of CADRI. CADRI has helped update Kyrgyzstan's national disaster risk reduction concept and
sorry, I think we could not really hear, but this was the feedback of one of our resident coordinator on the impact of a capacity diagnosis at country level. And all of those videos, all the resident coordinator, but also the government counterparts feedback on the diagnosis and the use of the diagnosis, you can also, of course, access them on our website. So second, let's say, third big programmatic offer is really what we call the programming review. And when it comes to the programming review, it starts very often with some kind of analytical mapping. So what it offers to government is really an overview of who does what. Also, it's a mapping of investment. So you can see, for instance, if most of the financing is coming from vertical fund, or is it coming from humanitarian financing. So it's also a very detailed analysis of who does what where. But when it comes to disaster risk reduction, and it also captures a lot of the financing that goes to climate adaptation. And then this actually informs some kind of stakeholder consultation, and obviously the end goal of a programming review is to have to facilitate a dialogue between stakeholders about, for instance, what are the underserved provinces. So you see, for instance, the example here of Timor-Leste. We really we mapped, if I recall, all disaster risk management and climate adaptation program in all provinces. And then we were able to see that some provinces were completely underserved, but also that some provinces were only working, for instance, on, I don't know, for instance, risk governance, but not so much on risk information, or only on preparedness, and not so much on, I don't know, some aspect of risk mitigation. So all of that, it's actually it's another way of looking at what is the country diagnosis when it comes to disaster risk reduction. There are many different ways to do it. Another programming review, which was a very different approach from Timor-Leste, was, for instance, in Iran, where we focused more on the impact of UN country team programming in disaster risk reduction in Iran. The next slide, please. So another training offer is in relation to this massive training e-catalog. So it's an attempt to actually consolidate the training offer in disaster risk reductions. So of course it can be generic. It can also be only for preparedness. You can also decide to look only at the material, at the training module available in French, or to only look at the training module in relation to drought or to the health sector, for instance. So it's here you see, for instance, training available with IFRC on disaster response law. So it's really actually a very good, let's say, resource for government and for UN country team, and for, of course, the broader community of partners to actually offer some training modules building, for instance, on the capacity diagnosis. So it's an immediate support post-capacity diagnosis if very specific gaps have been identified during the capacity diagnosis. Now, I think when it comes to, there is also this support to, before we move to Mongolia, and I think Mongolia will make it, of course, much more lively for you to see how we have actually rolled out those 4 services. But one service, of course, is also what do we do after the diagnosis. So I just want to also clarify that the diagnosis is obviously just a starting point of CADRI partnership engagement at country level. And usually the diagnosis actually is meant to support, again, a dialogue, a planning exercise with the whole, bringing the whole of government to actually help identify what to prioritize in capacity development in a given country at a given time. So for some countries, the main priority will be really to strengthen the risk governance, but in other countries, it can still be to really invest in early warning and disaster preparedness. And so it's, even if everything is integrated, it helps every country to actually agree on some kind of trajectory or learning path in relation to strengthening country systems to reduce risk. So when we say exactly what do those services deliver, we could say the main output of those services is an actionable plan to guide investment in risk reduction. So in many countries, the CADRI partners engagement has actually resulted into the development of a new national disaster risk reduction strategy that is truly multi-sectoral. So it's not, compared to many DRR strategies, the input of the CADRI partnership is that it's very concrete because it looks at priorities in sectors and also synergies, of course, between sectors when it comes to reducing disaster risk. National contingency plan also that are truly multi-sectoral have been is typically one of the outputs from a CADRI partnership engagement. But most importantly, CADRI has also contributed inputs to the revision of sectoral plans, for instance, yes, agriculture strategy, health, can be any sector, and also input to the national growth or development strategy. So I saw, for instance, this week we're in contact with Zambia, and we're informed that actually Zambia is about to review and revise the 9th national development plan, I think, or national growth plan. And the CADRI diagnosis is actually a strong critical input to the review of the national plan. And of course, last but not least, obviously, the CADRI engagement is always an input to the UN SCDF. So it's really good to try to actually start a CADRI engagement at the very beginning of the UN SCDF cycle. But in many countries, it has happened in the middle of the UN SCDF cycle. And still, it was seen as a way to actually operationalize, support work planning between humanitarian development agencies in relation to risk reduction and their support to the government strategy for disaster risk reduction. So now I'm going to hand over to our colleague from the Mongolia country office, Ariona, so that she can also, from the Mongolia resident coordinator office, who can also share with us the experience of CADRI in Mongolia. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie, for this handover. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So thank you for inviting me to this webinar. And then I'm really pleased to share the experience of the UN country team in Mongolia with the CADRI diagnosis process. Actually, the Mongolia's journey with CADRI began in 2022 when the government expressed its interest in assessing the human resource capacity for disaster risk reduction. Soon after, our office, the UN Resident Coordinator's Office, took the lead. While the initial focus was on human resources, the CADRI diagnosis allowed us to take a much broader approach, like looking also at policy, finance, technology, and implementation. So in 2023, as you see from the slide, the government formally requested support, and within a few months, we had identified the sectors, mobilized experts, and resolved also funding. So about half of the experts came from the UN country team in Mongolia, here in Mongolia, while the rest were drawn from regional and global levels. This combination gave us both local insights and international best practices. So the main assessment took place in September 2023, involving consultations with government ministries, the private sectors, development and humanitarian partners, and also communities itself. So the findings were validated a year later that year by the State Emergency Commission, chaired by the Deputy Prime Minister of Mongolia. So together with the ministries, we then developed an implementation plan, which the government now is leading with the UN agencies and then providing this technical support. So as you know, the UN has many specialized agencies, and then of course sometimes this can mean duplication or missed opportunities. So CADRI gave us the chance to bring all our experts together and provide one coherent assessment and then set of recommendations. So they provided us 26, us, I mean the government, also the UNCT members, 26 recommendations. And then this unified approach allowed us to speak with one voice and then commit collectively to supporting the government's next step. So what was the value of the CADRI for our UN country team? I would like to say that CADRI brought three key benefits for us. The first one, it gave us robust tools developed by international experts, which helped ensure concrete, context-specific recommendations. So the second one, it enabled us to present a unified UN perspective without conflicting with earlier individual assessments. The next or third one, it positioned the UN country team to support implementation under the government's leadership. So just before my intervention, Sophia already mentioned that this is not only the analysis, it also gives an opportunity to review or to develop this government strategy on DRR or any other policy documents. So right now, the government of Mongolia is developing its midterm strategy plan for the implementation of the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction from 2026 to 2020, 2020 the 20
30.
So yeah, 30, sorry. Thank you. The CADRI findings are shaping this plan and then ensuring alignment across ministries and then stronger national commitment to disaster risk reduction in the country. So in closing, CADRI has been a very valuable process in Mongolia, and then it helped us align our UN efforts, strengthen our partnership with the government, and then contribute meaningfully to building resilience of the people of Mongolia. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Aruna, for these kind words and the reflections, and also sharing the Mongolian experience, which is the one of the latest support that CADRI has been providing to directly to country together with the UNCT and under the leadership of the CEO office. So very much appreciative of your words, and then we look forward to carrying on this legacy, if you will, to other countries for the replication in this next few years, where we will see how we could best deliver CADRI, implement it right where it's needed, which is the UN country teams who would take over the legacy of CADRI. So now moving on to the next segment, we would like to introduce briefly, very much thankful to Aruna for already paving the way where we are going forward to the next CADRI phase. So as you know, CADRI service offer has been developed, implemented, well tested, and refined over the last 15 years. While the core approach remained the same, so we have those 4 service lines that Sophie mentions, presented in her in the intervention earlier. So the way we deliver is evolving. So after taking stocks of lessons learned, most recently from Mongolia and Djibouti in 2023-2024, we learned that the rollout of the services has been very much also dependent on the headquarter capacity in steering the work on the ground. So to ensure stronger sustainabilities and lasting impacts and stronger leadership from the UN country teams, which is really, really key. So we need to move toward that work. Next slide. This slide, yes. So with our new business model starting from 2025, CADRI operates as a fully UN country team-led and government-owned service model. So this approach empowers governments and partners to independently use CADRI tools and methodologies. So you please stay tuned for next week for our online tool demonstration, so where you can learn and then have full access to the CADRI tools and methodology, our digital tool. So for our new business model, there will be no central coordination unit or coordinate centralized global secretariat or dedicated funding from headquarters. So the process is now fully driven by national leaderships and the UN's country team coordination and leadership. So our models is both demand and priority driven. So the services are initiated by either the governments to support national processes or by the UN leaderships through the UN resident coordinator or one of the CADRI agencies to inform planning and programming in the areas of disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. And the national governments lead through a designated institution with a cross-sectoral mandate, ensuring a whole of government approach by convening ministries or relevant departments and sub-national authorities, whilst the UN's country team coordination is led by the resident or humanitarian coordinators, who then appoints lead agencies and CADRI team leaders to coordinate support, liaise with governments, and consolidate the results, and supported by technical focal point from the UN agencies. As Aruna mentioned in her intervention, these CADRI recommendations or work plan that have put forward through this CADRI process is really paving the way to support resilient or integrated DR or climate change adaptation programming at the country level in supporting government to meet their Sendai commitment. And the guidance. So the CADRI focal point will continue to provide backstopping support to ensure that this transition to the new for the new CADRI business model is well implemented. And yeah, I think this would be the new business, the new business model for the CADRI partnership moving forward. While of course the men's service offers remain the same, which are really key and well, as I mentioned, well implemented, well tested, well appreciated by both governments and the UN country team. Within this new business model, we are currently exploring the potential pilots in 3 countries. So we have Somalia, Pakistan, and Tunisia. Next slide, please. So please, you can reach out to us through this CADRI focal point of your contacts. So please refer to our contacts, be it at the regional or global or localized support using the contact from the cadri.net. With that, I think we can now conclude our session here, and then we move on to the question and answers, unless Sophie has something else to add.
Well, no, but just to conclude, again, we had a lot of discussion between the CADRI partners. So you see there are like 20 CADRI partners, out of which I think there are 12 UN organizations. So it's very much a UN partnership, but where the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent is also a very strong partner. And we had really a lot of exchange with government, trying to capture really like the client feedback, the honest client feedback, to see if we need to actually really adapt the offer beyond the big effort that was made to change the diagnosis tool in 2020. And again, the feedback we received, especially when it comes to lasting impact. When we, for instance, I'm thinking of the government of Jordan. I'm thinking of course, many countries in the Sahel, meeting them, like maybe like 6, 7, 8 years after a CADRI partnership engagement, and still understanding that actually this CADRI engagement has really laid the foundation for different ways to look at system, tools, capacities, also how it has brought the government together, and how actually the diagnosis, when there was a diagnosis, is still in use in many countries. So as one of our directors said recently, it's actually quite a good return on investment. And that's why we really want to roll out those webinars for you, so that you can really make the best use of those services if you need them, so that they are really well known in the UN system. So maybe we can take, yes, open for questions. Cannot see. Let me see.
Hi, Sophie. I don't see any question, but Kossi is making a remark, saying CADRI tools are very adapted to do the diagnostic. I use them for CADRI process in Djibouti. I was in the team from FAO. And now I see a hand up from Lajal.
Yes, please.
Lajal, you could unmute.
We cannot hear you, Lajal. You're still not yet unmuted. Unmute. Lajal?
Hello?
Yes,
Now,
please.
yeah, thank you. Sorry, I had some problem with my microphone. Hello, everyone. I'm Layal Jabour, UN Habitat Syria, and I'm urban planner and climate change focal point for international and global funds. Actually, it is very beneficial for us in Syria, for all UN agencies, and also I think for the national authorities to follow this webinar and to be exploring the opportunities for enhancing this DRR and adaptation planning. My question is, I don't know if it's ahead of the next session and the followed, but I think it is also well to know if this kind of diagnosis and preparation process that you are engaging with have any kind of special for the countries that been impacted by crisis and conflicts, which is more affected the physical infrastructure, etc., as in Syria, as you all may know, that's been suffering from a very long conflict and for more than 14 years. And this was catastrophic at all levels and at all sectors, which is also combined by the climate change impacts and the severe, let's say, drought and immigration and declining in agriculture, crops, and etc. So there is any kind of analysis or tools used for these kind of cases. And my second point is, does the process from the first step with engaging and doing, let's say, the scoping and mapping till, let's say, to the development stage and recommendation for growth in planning and adaptation, would take more, I mean, more than, for example, I saw this Mongolia experience, which is great, would take more if for example, the governance itself wasn't established and the plans, the national plans were a little bit outdated and missed. So this is my 2 points, and thank you. Sorry to took long. Thank you.
Yeah, do you want me to start on this?
Yeah, please,
and
you
then,
start.
Okay. So actually, it's been one of the issues for the CADRI partners. You know, half of our partners are humanitarian partners, and the discussion has been very much on, okay, how do we adapt this approach to fragile contexts? And so there is actually an adaptation of this approach to fragile context. And that's why we have, as you can see, this engagement starting in Somalia. Although it has not started yet, but we are in the preparatory phase. So we are quite interested to see how actually the methodology can be adapted to the Somalia context. But in short, the diagnosis, it's possible. So in short, the answer is that yes, it's feasible. And there are two ways to look at how to roll out the service offer in fragile context. One is actually to focus on the local level. So on local level capacities, and for that there is a specific adaptation of the diagnosis tool and mapping. If you want, the analytical mapping will be the same, but really focusing on on the, let's say, district, provincial level, or at least on local government. So that's one. And also, of course, to also reduce very much the scope of the diagnosis to, so instead of covering 6-7 sectors, as you mentioned, it could cover really infrastructure. You know, if the massive investment in the coming decade in a given country is going to be on the rehabilitation, reconstruction of infrastructure, restoration of social services, it's possible then to actually decide to focus specifically the diagnosis on this, and then to reduce the scope of what would be a more standard diagnosis in other countries. So, and in terms of yeah, I mean, I think it's also shorter. I'm trying to reflect, for instance, on the approach to the diagnosis the CADRI partners have actually used in Iran. And it was quite, reduced in scope, and also it was very focused, also in terms of time. So for some countries, the CADRI diagnosis, the whole engagement can last up to 18 months because of a lot of consultation with the sectors and prioritization exercise. But reflecting on the Iran country engagement, it was much shorter. It was really very focused and intense, but over, I think, I cannot remember exactly if it was over the space of 3-4 months. So that's feasible. Again, and definitely Syria would be probably, yes, a good candidate. It really depends also, of course, on the interest of the UN country team, because that's really the driving force, is how the UN country team, what the UN country team wants to do, how much capacity the country team is ready to actually align and invest in this exercise. So yeah, that's a discussion we're having right now with Somalia. Thank you.
Maybe just quickly to add from my side, I think Lajal, I think it would be great if you could join us for the next next week for the CADRI 2 launch, just to ensure that the new CADRI, the CADRI tool, the principle of conflict sensitivity is mainstreamed in the questionnaires across the 10 modules and the 5 capacity dimensions that we will be touching upon. I think for the sake of the time right now, we will not be going through this in detail, but just to assure you that, of course, the tool can be adapted to the fragile context, and then we also ensure that the principle of conflict sensitivity is mainstreamed in our that capacity diagnosis tool. Over.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well noted.
I don't see any other questions, but the floor is still open. In case you have any questions, please go ahead, raise your hand. Thank you so much.
Okay, so if we don't have any question, I would really encourage you, if you have a minute right now, to visit the CADRI Partners website, and to especially what we call the country hub, because on the country hub you can really upload all the products which have been produced and maybe your country has already gone through a CADRI diagnosis or through a CADRI programming review. So you would be able to know that if you check the country hub and then upload those products. And maybe also one more point in terms of the output of CADRI engagement at country level. It's not always a big report, because we know that not many people have time to read big reports. But out of the analysis, we also produce together Policymaker Digest, on specific issues, which can be a policymaker digest on a specific sector, or a policymaker digest just on early warning, like the one that was produced, for instance, in the Maldives in 2023. So it was only on the state of early warning, and then a contribution to the early warning for all initiative. And also one last point is that the CADRI diagnosis can, or programming review, can also be an input to a proposal development for a vertical fund. And we've also been able to track how this has helped the country team actually, and the country, the resident agencies and non-resident agencies to work together to actually support the government in the development of proposal for vertical fund, for the Green Climate Fund or the GEF.
Thanks so much, Sophie. There's a question from the chat, Patricia de Souza. A quick question from her side, timeline for deployment, and what's the process to include a country in the CADRI work?
So again, so the process is to actually, it has to be in agreement with the government. So the first thing is to secure the government leadership. And so it really starts with a discussion between the government leadership. So it can be the Ministry of Planning, it can be the Ministry of Finance, it can be the National Development, the Disaster Management Office, the National Disaster Management Office, the NDMO or NDMA, with the resident coordinator or humanitarian coordinator, to actually first agree on what are the parameters. What do we need? Do we need diagnosis? Do we need a programming review? Do we need something quick and dirty? Do we need something much longer engagement to bring the different sectoral ministries together and also engage the private sector? So the scope, the discussion on the scope, the agreement on the scope at country level is really the basis of starting a country and a CADRI engagement. Again, sometimes it's also at the same time you start a UNCCA, but not always. And then you would, again, in the new business model, the leadership very much lies with the UN country team. So it also means that you start looking at what are the capacities at country level to actually support the rollout of the methodology. So the deployment of experts to actually perform the diagnosis is no longer the preferred modality. So it's still possible to have deployment of experts, especially to actually train the UN country team and the government on the different tools, etc. But when it comes to really consolidating the deliverables, this would actually, you will need to have some capacity within the country team or have a consultant to be able to consolidate, if you want, the output at the end. So deployment, when you say what are the timelines for the deployment of experts, usually it's pretty fast. We never had a very long lapse time for the deployment of experts, except if you're really requesting a very specific type of expertise like tourism, which happened, and it was not easy for us to find a tourism expert. Or if you have, it depends what type of expertise you expect. You need to mobilize. But it's again, the expertise deployment is to complement the UN country team and government and Red Cross or Red Crescent Society expertise at country level. It's not meant to actually, it's not calling upon a team that will deliver the product for the country team and then go back. Because that's really where we noted when this has happened, and of course this has happened in the past, this is where we had issues in terms of lasting impact and ownership by the country team. So the new business model is for us to really make sure that the country team is it's the driver in the driving seat together with the government. And it's possible to deploy experts to complement, to actually work under the leadership of the UNCT. So the timeline, I don't know, I mean, I would say the timeline for deployment, once you have your terms of reference on the scope of the exercise, I think it could be 1 month, 6 weeks to find the right, to make sure that everyone can be deployed at the same time when possible. Did I answer your question?
Yes, he's mentioning yes. Thanks so much, Patricia, for your question. Thanks, Sophie. I think we're 1 minute away from the time. I don't know if there are any other questions. Otherwise, you can always get in touch. Rebecca has included the way that you could communicate with your questions in written form to us. Otherwise, thank you so much. Sophie, Virya, over to you. I think we still had one video.
Yes. Rick, can we move?
Such an important week of the Global Platform on Disaster Risk Reduction with the countries, I mean, sharing their experience in bringing DR at their doorstep, in ensuring, I would say, all of government ownership to what is being done by the CADRI agencies is, well, it's fantastic to hear that. And this is what we at the UN are aiming to do, to really provide you, the countries, with the best of our expertise so that you can develop and own your own plans, strategies, and implement them. So it's truly impressive what has been achieved by this partnership over the last 15 years. I wish now we'll be able to thrive, to continue, and to go from lessons to legacy, as you were saying, so that we can continue deliver that type of support. If you look at the value for money, the return from investment is huge. One of the biggest I know, perhaps. So with that, thank you very much. Congratulations, and let's go forward together.
Thank you, colleagues, for joining us today. What a concluding remarks from nice concluding remarks from our former CADRI board members, Mr. Dominique Boujon, who is now the FAO Director of Geneva office. And with that, we thank you once again for your participation, and we look forward to welcome you to the next week webinars on the CADRI tool. Thank you, and have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.